on abundance and liberty for all. It demands an end to poverty and racial injustice, to which we're totally committed in our time.
Only 3 years after the signing of Lyndon Johnson's Great Society legislation in 1965, urban riots broke out across America following the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. Last week, George Floyd died while being arrested by the police in Minneapolis. Since then, we've seen daily protests, rioting, and looting in cities across the country. And along with it, the Democratic Party has offered a single explanation for these events.
The real issue is the continuing racism in this country. And it is chronic, and it is endemic, and it is institutional.
Party leaders such as Governor Cuomo are engaged in an act of systemic forgetting. Unlike Governor Cuomo, most of today's demonstrators were born after 1990, by which time Great Society programs had been in place for 25 years.
No justice!
It is now 55 years later, and across that half-century, trillions of dollars have been spent on programs created to end poverty, Medicaid, food stamps, and public housing projects. What has it done for America's poor? Very little. Yet Democrats continue to deflect attention from this reality.
The moment has come for our nation to deal with systemic racism, to deal with the growing economic inequity that exists in our nation.
Today, Democrats who created and funded these programs, such as Joe Biden, believe they can make Americans ignore this massive public policy failure and blame systemic racism instead. To his credit, Governor Cuomo at least recognizes there is a problem.
How many times have we burned down our own businesses, our own neighborhoods, and our own communities?
The decades-long failure of the original liberal model is now so great and embarrassing that its current owners have created an alternative reality, such as blaming American settlers in the early 17th century via the New York Times 1619 Project.
So the conceit of the magazine, if you haven't read it, is that you can look across almost every aspect of American life, whether you think it has to do with slavery or not, and through very rigorous scholarship, we were going to show you that it does.
The situation is worse than in 1968 because so much of the political system is now engaged in the substitution of sentiment for substance. Fortunately, some people are pushing back.
Our inner cities are ablaze, toxic drugs and predatory violence. But 1619 says that these conditions were spawned by slavery in the shadow of Jim Crow. But this is patently untrue. If that were the case, the fact that more blacks are killed by other blacks today than were killed over a 50-year period by the Klan. We have a 9/11 every 6 months. That condition did not exist prior to the 1960s.
There are alternatives. Get people out of the public housing prisons by letting them achieve more ownership and equity in where they live. Support school charters and school choice, which black parents love because they teach their kids values, self-respect, and hope.
I think it's a whole lot better than the public schools. They challenge the kids more.
There is a path out of the racism narrative if Americans are given a chance to see it.